Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about why sometimes our daughters and our girls are more vulnerable to pornography than boys may be. If you haven't been on here before, if you haven't met me before, I'm Kristen Jensen, and I am the author of Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and the founder of Protect Young Minds. And our mission is to help parents and mentor and guide them as they help their children through difficult times and good times too online. So today I'd like to talk about girls especially. Sometimes we think, and many people believe, that girls are not as vulnerable to pornography as boys are. Unfortunately, that's just not the truth. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of girls being pulled into porn. Girls are just as curious as boys are. And so it's really important to recognize that they're curious about sex. They're curious to see things as much as boys. In fact, Joy Jones, who is the leader of a very large children's religious organization, said this at a recent conference: "I am concerned that many parents may not yet realize how dangerous pornography really is, or may think it's only a problem for the boy next door. Reality is this problem is affecting our boys and our girls, and we're not talking about it enough. The good news is that it's never too late. We can begin today." So even if you're one of those that thought, oh, you know what, my girls are fine, it's my boys I'm worried about, I hope that this can help you learn a few tips to help your daughters as well. So I wanted to tell you about Cassie. She's a friend of mine. She got into pornography at age 11. And, you know, when she confided in a friend of hers at middle school, her friend said, "Oh, don't worry about that. Don't feel bad. Everyone does it." And this was, you know, over 10 years ago. So she got into it. She started by reading stories. And many girls begin by reading stories, erotic literature, but they always end up going to some kind of video format. So another story is of an 8-year-old girl who, once her parents gave her the porn talk, the sex talk, she got into pornography. She typed in sex into her browser in her mobile device that she was given when she was 8 years old, typed in sex, and guess what? Well, you know what happened. And she started looking and watching, and for months, and her personality changed until her mom finally figured out what was going on. And she got treatment, and definitely that definitely helped. But again, you know, who would think that a girl would get pulled into porn? Well, it's happening all the time. In fact, I wanted to read you a quote from a therapist who treats kids and who has a lot of background in child development. Jeffrey Ford says this: "A lot of people think that girls are safe from pornography, but girls are just as susceptible as boys. In some ways, girls are more at risk because parents and religious leaders assume they aren't as curious as boys about porn and do nothing to protect them." So I wanted to tell you a story. Last summer, I pulled together a group of teenagers, and I wanted them to evaluate a presentation that I give to teenagers and their parents. And I wanted to have them help me, you know, understand what they thought was the most important, you know, were the most important messages. Well, what was interesting is when I asked them what kind of phones they had and what kind of access they had to social media, the boys, now I will tell you these were all from a church, the boys either had flip phones or no phones. The girls both had smartphones, and they were both into social media. such as Instagram and other social media platforms. It didn't seem like their parents were worried at all, and yet for the boys, there was clearly a delineation between the kind of access that they could have and the kind of access that the girls had. So it just kind of proves that we may feel like more comfortable giving girls more access, giving girls more freedom at a younger age, but I think we need to rethink that. So, one of the people that I've met in this movement to combat pornography is Jessica Harris. And Jessica Harris was a girl that was pulled into pornography from a young age, and it really affected her life. And she was able to get into recovery, and now she goes all over speaking. She's an author, and she talks about this very subject. And she wrote an article for us on Protect Young Minds, and I just wanted to read a quote that she said. She said, "The girls are growing up in a sexualized world that bombards them with confusing messages." She says, "Already girls are dealing with twisted messages about love and sex. The increase in sexting or sharing nudes on apps reveals they believe that they have to exploit themselves in order to gain acceptance, even among their peers. With abusive content being mainstreamed, an aspect of violence is added into that message." So here's another problem with girls looking at pornography. They're like learning from it. Oh, this is who I have to be. This is how I have to act. This is what I have to put up with in a relationship. And we don't want our daughters to have those very destructive, painful messages given to them that are, promulgated in pornography. So I recently interviewed 10 porn addicts, and several of them, most of them, were in recovery. 2 of them were women. And it was interesting that I learned that women get into pornography maybe for different reasons than men or than boys. And these women, again, I mentioned before, they start reading stories, erotic literature, and then they go into video. One of the women I spoke to, she got addicted to watching anime porn, which is like a cartoon form of pornography. She said she'd be too embarrassed to watch real pornography, but she was watching real pornography, and she was masturbating to it, and it was just as much of an addiction for her as if she were watching real photos and real footage. So it's so important to help our daughters and help them understand the messaging of pornography, the dangers of pornography, and especially how it can harm them. So let me just give you 5 reasons, 5 things you can do to help girls, to help protect girls from pornography. First of all, you have to realize that pornography is not a male problem. It's a human problem. We need to use the same protective measures for girls if we're going to use filtering, if we're going to insist that they don't have smartphones until they're older. Whatever we decide to use for boys or our sons, we need to use the same standards, the same things for our girls. We need to teach girls to know what pornography is, right? A definition. We need to give our girls a understanding of why it can be harmful to them and to their brains. And we need to give them a plan, such as the can-do plan and good pictures, bad pictures, to help them know exactly what to do when they see pornography, and that they can come to us, their parents or trusted adult, and tell us each time they may be exposed to pornography. Come and tell us each and every time. Okay, number 2, begin sooner than you think to answer questions about sex. So, again, girls are just as curious as boys, right? So, another quote from Joy Jones. Quote, for some reason, we don't talk very much to youth and children about one of the strongest urges, i.e. sex, right? One of the strongest urges and biggest temptations they will face. Our reluctance sets them up to be taught primarily by the internet, other children or teenagers, or even Hollywood. So again, we don't want our children to get their questions about sex answered by Hollywood, by pornography, even by their peers. So much better if they get it from the loving adults in their lives that know the kinds of messages and the values that they want to give to their children. So we need to start earlier than we think talking to children about sex. And we just put up a blog post this last week on Tuesday about 8 books that you can use to talk to kids about sex. So go check that out. Really some great resources there. Okay, number 3, help your daughters understand that their worth is more than skin deep. We often compliment guys or boys about what they can do. And we often compliment girls about how they look, right? So it's so important that we remember to compliment girls about, the things that they do and not just the way that they look. Compliment them and encourage them about accomplishments, right? About their character traits more than their appearance. And I have to work on this too. It's so easy to fall into this trap. With so many sexual cues and so many messages telling girls that their only worth is their appearance, and this is just devastating to girls. It's toxic. So let's tell girls that their worth is much more than their appearance. All right, number 4, realize that porn use among girls is both isolating and shaming. So many girls think that they are the only ones that are looking at porn, that they feel like they're freaks of nature, because they've also bought into this idea that, oh, it's only a boy thing, and if I'm looking at porn and interested in it and being pulled into it, then I must be some freak of nature. And we need to help our girls understand that this, again, is a human problem, not just a boy problem, but it affects girls too. I hope that you can create a safe environment so that your girls can come to you and talk to you about these feelings and about some of the temptations or some of the problems that they face online and out in the environment in the schools that they're going to. All right, number 5, if your daughter opens up to you about a problem with pornography, be encouraging and supportive. Okay, I know it can be freak out time, but help your daughter know that you love them, that you love her, and that you will do everything you can to help her, and that you still respect her and think that she is a wonderful person. I mean, the worst thing that you can do is say, I'm so disappointed in you, and this isn't the way you were raised, and blah, 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 and to take it like an insult to yourself. I don't think as parents we understand the kind of world that our kids are growing up in. So we need to really hold off on the judgment and pour on the empathy. thick empathy. Joy Jones said, when children are exposed to pornography, and especially when they get caught in its web, they will be embarrassed, frightened, and tearful too. It's difficult to take something that has been in the dark and expose it to light. It feels shameful and vulnerable. They may have failures and challenges along the way as they recover and heal. Their need for constant love is critical. So I guess the final thing, and I'll just say, is love. Loving our children, accepting them where they are right now, and helping them move forward, knowing that they're not perfect, we're not perfect, and overcoming an addiction or a compulsion with pornography is very challenging, and they need our help. So they need our help. Our daughters need our help to stay away from pornography, and if they've been pulled into it, they need our help to and our love mostly and support to get out of it. So I hope this has been helpful. I have an article about this, a couple of articles actually I will link to. I hope you'll go and read them, and most of all, I hope you will be protective about the girls in your life, your daughters, your granddaughters, your nieces, your friends, because this is pornography is affecting girls as much as it is affecting boys. And sometimes they're even more vulnerable because we're not protecting them. So let's protect girls, and let's understand that they are not freaks of nature if they get pulled into this. They are good kids, and they're just living in a very difficult time when it comes to these kinds of issues. So thanks again. I'll be on next week. Just let's remember that our kids need our help and our constant love and mentoring. All right, bye-bye.